is Valley News Live at 4.
New for you at 4, a two-vehicle crash in South Moorhead left an SUV on its side and roads blocked off for a while this afternoon. Happened right around 2 p.m. at the corner of 14th Street South and Beasley Boulevard. It involved a white car and a silver SUV, which ended up on its side. Moorhead Police, Fire, Minnesota State Patrol, ambulances, tow trucks, they all came to help out. The intersection again was closed for a while, but no one, we're told, was seriously hurt. We continue to follow a scary situation out of South Fargo as police continue to look for people who they say shot a woman inside her apartment. Police say her husband was arguing outside with two people in a car just before 10 last night when they exchanged gunfire. One bullet went through the apartment window and hit the woman inside. The people in the car took off. Police are still looking for them. They were driving a white Jeep. Police have not released any other information. They say they know who they're looking for, though, because all of the people involved in the shooting know each other. Firefighters were called back out to the Maple Log Resort in Callaway, Minnesota today, where multiple fires are still burning. The popular Lakes Country Resort went up in flames around 8:30 yesterday morning. What once stood as a three-story, 54,000 square foot lodge is now a total loss. You can see how big those flames raged yesterday. Fire crews say the building's tin roof and its size, as well as simply the resort's remoteness, made for difficult firefighting conditions. Sheriff Todd Glander says they are trying to keep nearby trees wet so those don't also catch fire and spread. Switching gears now, taking a look outside. A beautiful, almost summer-like day. Might be the last time we're saying that for quite some time. First Alert Storm Team forecaster Summer Schnellbach joins us now with the details.
Yeah, that's right, Justin. We've got some big changes coming starting as early as this evening. A cold front has been swinging through. That's bringing wind first and foremost. Second, it will start to bring some rain, some cold, and eventually the possibility of some flakes. Right now, though, enjoy this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. We have a few increasing clouds as that cold front has just now passed through Fargo, and you can tell by the direction of the wind. Ahead of the front, the wind is still out of the south and southwest, but now behind the front, wind has turned more westerly. So we have those westerly winds here in Fargo. Look how these winds are gusting behind the front. Areas that you see in orange here, that's where we're seeing gusts near or over 40 miles per hour. There's the front just through Fargo, about to reach Detroit Lakes and Fergus Falls, Baudette as well here before too long. Ahead of the front, these temperatures are still balmy, very, as you said, summer-like. We're at 76 right now in Fargo, 68 now in Grand Forks behind that front, 57 in Devil's Lake, near 80 down south. Yeah, things are going to change, Justin. Our average 59, we're going to drop below that for several days. I'll let you know just how chilly we're going to get and when and where we could see flakes in the upcoming days in just a few minutes.
That's the plan. Thanks, Summer. New information this afternoon on a hunting accident in Cass County, Minnesota. The sheriff says the 12-year-old boy who was shot Sunday has died from his injuries. Deputies got the report of a hunting accident just before 8:30 Sunday morning in rural Motley. A family was hunting squirrels, they say, on public land when the boy was shot by his 47-year-old uncle. He was then flown to a Twin Cities hospital where he later died. An autopsy is scheduled with the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's office. Bomb squad crews are working to dispose of multiple explosives found west of Williston today. Police say they were actually found yesterday during a narcotics search. The building and a nearby area were evacuated as a safety precaution. Officials are now asking the public to remain away from the area just in case. A person of interest has been identified, but so far no arrests have been made. After multiple people reached out to our whistleblower hotline, we did some digging into an OSHA complaint. They received an issue alleging unsafe working conditions at CI Apparel. OSHA is working with the company now to resolve any issues. CI Apparel has until the end of this week to respond to OSHA and ensure its facility is adhering to federal safety and health regulations. Former employees claim people are operating machines without certification, equipment is not up to code, and there are boxes blocking walkways. Stick with Valley News Live for updates on this developing story. A major railroad union has rejected a temporary agreement brokered by the Biden administration, renewing the possibility of a strike that could cripple the economy. Part of the deal, reached last month, granted rail workers a 24% pay increase, an annual bonus of $5,000, and improved working conditions. The union said that's not enough. 56% voted against the agreement, expressing concerns still about the lack of paid time off and other issues. However, the union will delay any strike until 5 days after Congress reconvenes mid-November to allow time for additional negotiations. So they have at least a month. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court started hearing arguments in a case that could have far-reaching impacts in the sale and price of pork and potentially other ag industries as well. It involves a challenge to a California animal welfare law that bans the sale of pork derived from pigs bred in tight, confined spaces. The law's challengers say this unlawfully regulates farmers in other states, while supporters are worried that striking down this law could potentially limit states' abilities to protect the health and welfare of their own people. President Biden and other G7 leaders are pledging their undeterred support for Ukraine today. Ukraine has been hit with relentless Russian missiles recently. 19 people were killed this week, according to officials, and many have lost access to power, water, and heat just ahead of the winter season. Skylar Henry has details from the White House.
For a second straight day, Russian forces kept up attacks on Ukrainian cities, terrorizing civilians in the south and elsewhere.
Да сложно словами описать.
The owner of a car shop that was destroyed expressed sadness at the death of a security guard.
Он лежит у нас в 6-й палате.
This woman was rescued from her home after a Russian anti-aircraft missile hit the area. The fresh attacks come just a day after Russia struck cities and critical infrastructure across Ukraine Monday, following an attack on a key bridge to Russian-occupied Crimea. In an emergency meeting, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on the leaders of the G7 countries to send more air defense systems. He warned Russian President Vladimir Putin could escalate the conflict even further. In a joint statement after that meeting, President Biden and the leaders of the other group of 7 countries vowed to continue to provide military and financial support for Ukraine, promising severe consequences if Russia uses nuclear weapons. In St. Petersburg Tuesday, Putin met with the head of the International Atomic Energy Agency to discuss safety concerns at a nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine, now occupied by Russian forces.
We do have issues that have to do with the nuclear safety.
Putin indicated he is open to dialogue about the plant. He's expected to meet with Turkish President Erdogan Wednesday, who says he believes Putin is seeking an end to the ongoing war. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in Brussels tonight to meet with NATO leaders and help coordinate military aid to Ukraine. First responders, county and university officials are conducting a full-scale exercise at Valley City State University today. They're practicing emergency response to violent situations and communications during a major incident. Weapons shooting blank bullets will be used to add to realism of the scenario. Volunteers will be acting as victims. There'll be simulated injuries. If you see anything around there, don't be concerned. For safety reasons, though, the public is being asked not to enter the designated exercise area or to come to the university tonight. It's 1 week until the Minnesota governor's debate here on Valley News Live, featuring current Governor Tim Walz and challenger Scott Jensen. That debate is next Tuesday, October 18th from 7 till 8, live from our Gray sister station in Rochester, Minnesota. You can watch it live on KX4. I'll be one of the journalists on the panel asking the questions. You can send me question ideas at my email address, justin.betti, B-E-T-T-I, at valleynewslive.com. We received dozens already. Thank you for those. Coming up on your news at 4, some people in Florida cashing in on insurance claims, but many left empty-handed without insurance at all. We'll tell you why.
And as that cold front continues to pass, temperatures will be falling rather quickly this evening. Fairly cloudy skies as well. Grand Forks turning chilly, and this chilly air, once it settles in, it's going to be settling in for a few days. I'll walk you through your chilly forecast and chances for snow next.